Great, just wait a little bit longer. See where we are on the. Oh, there's Tim. Great, thank you. All right. Shall we, it's 1 minute past. Let's just leave it another minute and then we'll, yeah, look, there's Kezia. Welcome, Kezia. If you just introduce yourself via the chat, that'd be great, and then we'll come and introduce you a bit later on in the conversation. Right. I think most people are here who we're expecting. Is that right, Nikki? Oh, there's Jackie. Right.
I think we've more or less got everybody. I'm still trying to work my way through the chat.
Great. Well, lovely to see you all. For those of you that haven't met me before, I'm Zoe Nicholson. I'm Deputy Leader of Lewes District Council. Welcome to the Lewes District Recovery Summit. For those people that haven't been here before, and I know that we've got some newcomers, and in particular, I'd like to welcome Isabel Sharkey, who's just become Mayor of Peacehaven Town Council, and Audrey Jarvis, who's standing in for Ruth from Friends of Lewes. I also saw, but haven't yet seen on the screen, that Justin Ingham's here, our new district inspector from the Sussex Police. Welcome. And I thought that Graham, the new chief exec of Ayres, was coming, but maybe hasn't quite made it in yet. Adam's just joined us in a new role as Seaford Town Clerk. So welcome. Just to remind people that I think we set this up just under a year ago, in response to the pandemic and its likely impact on our community, as a way essentially of coordinating both the voice and intelligence and understanding of the public sector, but also the business and community sector. And throughout the kind of last year, this forum has served for a place where we discuss some of the impacts that are being felt by our community. And last time in particular, we were right in the middle. I believe we did it in February. So we were right in the middle of the third major lockdown, and also the second most significant spike of the pandemic. And people actually gave us feedback that they really enjoyed the more kind of situation rep update approach. So we've carried that on, and then we've also got a guest, Kezia Pugh from the Living Wage Foundation, who's going to do a brief talk about the living wage and also the potential for us. Essentially, because part of the economic solution comes in protecting those people who are most vulnerable from job loss or the impact of economic collapse that we may or may not face. So that's the sort of shape of the session. I'm going to I don't know if people saw the agenda, or if we want to put the agenda in the chat just to help make the flow of this go well. But essentially, we've got Tim wheeling up first, and then Daryl Gale, our Director of Public Health, and Jessica, and then Jenny, Jessica Britton, who's from the NHS locally, from the East Sussex DCG, and then also we've got Jenny Watson. However, Jenny Watson, who's representing 3VA, is stuck in a incident on part of her travels, so will be joining us via phone, hopefully. So if that feels like an okay shape, then we'll kick off. Tim, do you want to start us off?
Thanks, Zoe. Thanks very much. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's well. If I give you a short update of service delivery since we last spoke. Obviously, our focus is firmly on supporting business and residents at this time. Our most pressing thing this week is obviously the opening up of hospitality venues, which started today. In lead up to this, we sent out a pack to all the hospitality venues, signposting links to government website, but we also sent information about Legionella. We're quite concerned about the amount of time the water may have been shut off or standing in those hospitality venues. And we've also supplied them with all the signs that they need to put up in their premises, including the new NHS Track and Trace, signs for people to respect one another, how to wear face masks correctly, everything we can do to support them opening in a safe COVID way. At the end of the last lockdown, we developed a COVID ready scheme, working with partners, and this scheme was for hotels, restaurants and bars, ensuring COVID compliance. I'm really pleased that the Department of Health is looking at this as a national standard, that COVID ready scheme that we got across Lewes District. And our specialist teams have continued their rapid response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll be operating licensing patrols throughout Lewes District all this week and all next weekend. And the purpose of those patrols is to assist businesses to open and stay open rather than to force them to close. The team will be advising businesses if they're not doing things correctly and how to put those right, really for the safety of the business and for all our community. So we will be monitoring how this week goes and the following weeks with the easing of lockdown in those hospitality areas. Obviously, as we spoke about last time, the team have had to, the grants team have had to administer 13 different grant schemes since March last year. That's alongside their normal work, which is collecting council tax and business rates, which they managed to maintain on target despite the challenges the last year have presented. And that collection of council tax and business rates is crucial not only for our own frontline services, but for our partners agencies such as East Sussex County Council and the police and the fire brigade to be able to deliver their frontline services. To date, we have administered 4,794 business grants, which totals £38.5 million and provided to businesses across Lewes District. We've still got our exceptional hardship grant fund open, but as we will have managed to award 100% of all grant funding that we've received from the government by the second week of June, we're hopeful that we'll be eligible to apply for a top-up from the central government for Lewes District Council, and we'll be able to devise a new scheme with members and how we spend that top-up to support businesses further through this reopening period. And it's really pleased, if you look at the press, it's really good to see that we've managed to get 100% of our grant funding out. Other local authorities are still paying out their grant funding and businesses are still waiting, something we consider is not acceptable. We developed an application portal with a partner SME, and we're still using that for applications, which means we pay out within 3 to 4 working days of an application being made, and we are able to really prevent fraudulent applications, which is something I think we'll see come more and more to the front, to the fore as we go through post assurance checks. With regards housing benefit, obviously we see a continued increase in demand. We're probably 40 to 50% up pre-pandemic rates. The performance stats are set by the DWP, which are 22 days for new claims and 8 days for a change of circumstances. We've compiled our 2020 performance data, which took us all through the pandemic, And we new claims, we averaged 12.7 days out from the target of 22, and on change of circumstances, it was 6.2 days against a target of 8. That is the best performance in Lewis for 20 years. Real testament. We had challenges with our staff working from home, homeschooling for a number of people, caring for dependents. I think it's testament to the new flexible working policy that we put in place and the support we're giving staff to work at home in this new way. So it's really, and obviously the payment of housing benefit quickly is crucial to keep vulnerable people in their properties. We still administer the track and trace scheme. So that has now been extended to the 30th of June. So if anyone is told to self-isolate by the NHS, we can make a payment to enable them to stay at home if they're losing income. On top of the work around the pandemic, on the May the 4th, we went live with a new team structure, which was really to make a new structure around the changes in demand caused by the COVID pandemic, whilst at the same time delivering the administration's corporate plan. We've had a real growth in digital contact, so we're building on that and developing customer portals to enable more self-serve for those customers who want to engage with us in that manner. But it's important to note we're still maintaining the traditional contact methods that we had before, and we have reopened our customer contact point at Southover House for customers to come in and see us. We have still seen a big shift to digital contact though, and more people do want to contact us that way. By enabling more people to contact us that way, we can then focus our traditional methods on those who can't. The team has got a strong focus on the environment. We're launching the biodiversity strategy at next Cabinet, and we'll be delivering a significant number of environmental projects over the next 18 months through a new green consultancy team. And this helps us meet the administration's corporate plan. We're presently advertising for 4 key posts in that team, including ecology and air quality specialists. So this is seen as a real investment in green initiatives to deliver those corporate priorities. We've set up an income maximisation and welfare team, which will continue to drive the collection of income to protect frontline services, but more importantly, balances the needs of the customers, ensuring those who require financial support receive it. We'll use the team to expand our use of intelligent data to ensure we collect debt fairly. It's something we brought in during the pandemic and something that we want to continue. And it enabled us to identify those vulnerable customers who needed support through the use of data. So we can provide them the support rather than just going down the traditional route of chasing debt. We also now provide EU exit support. So we've got a team in place that can support local businesses who want to export to trade in Europe. And we've also had to recruit a port health team to work in Newhaven Port, as we would be the authority that has to judge on food and animal product imports. With regards housing, obviously we've seen a peak in demand around a number of housing services. We have at the moment 59 antisocial behaviour cases live with the team. That's quite high for the team. As a result, and it has increased during the pandemic. We continue to call all our retirement housing tenants at least once a week. And obviously with repairs, there was a stopping of repairs for quite a lengthy period, and the team are now trying to catch up. In the last month, the team carried out 333 emergency repairs and 544 routine repairs, so 877 repairs carried out in the month. So they're really catching up on the backlog of where we were with repairs. We've seen an increase in customers presenting as homeless or the risk of homeless. And again, we have resourced the team so we can deal with this, especially when the eviction ban ends at the end of May. We see there'll be an increase in demand for people at risk of homelessness. Last month, we saw 59 people at risk of homelessness, of which 5 were placed into emergency accommodation. The other 54, we found alternative solutions because we feel really strongly that emergency accommodation is not a solution to homelessness, and you need to find other ways of dealing with those problems. At the moment in Lewis District, we have 31 people in emergency accommodation and 32 families in temporary accommodation. This is lower than pre-pandemic, so really pleased that we managed to moving more people we can move out of emergency accommodation, the better. We presently have five people sleeping rough on the streets that our outreach workers are working with, and we have 10 former rough sleepers accommodated in our properties, and we've accommodated 25 in total during the government's get everyone in edict. Really, I've just finished around street scene and open space. We're expecting an increase in demand of open space as we come out of this lockdown. We've increased obviously our litter picking and bin emptying above our normal summer schedule, and we're monitoring those hotspots and we'll take action if there is any issues in them. And just a shout out to the waste team. Really, we've maintained a full waste service throughout the pandemic. And I'm really pleased that with support of Daryl and others that we've managed to get our waste team fully vaccinated. They're doing a really crucial frontline job, and the fact they're fully vaccinated and we have no COVID outbreaks in that team who work in close contact together is really brilliant. But I'm happy to stop there and take any questions. I think you're on mute, Zoe.
Thank you for pointing that out. I'd prefer that we do questions at the end, if that's possible. Christina, is that going to work for you? Just so that we can get the overall picture. So we've got Daryl Gale up next. Welcome, Daryl. Thanks ever so much for giving us your time today. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you. So what I'd like to do is give a brief sort of epidemiological update, and I'm sure that people will want to ask about variants of concern, particularly the Indian variant, of which there's not a great deal to report locally, thankfully, but obviously so today the 7-day rolling rates per 100,000 population, England is at 21, East Sussex is at 7.5, Lewis District has increased over the last week to 13.6, and this is a pattern that we've seen in our other districts and boroughs, that generally there's always one that goes slightly higher than the others and causes a little bit of concern, but actually this is usually down to random unexpected fluctuations. Over in Brighton and Hove, they're at 20.6, so they're a lot higher. They're just under the England rate. West Sussex overall is at 13.9, but neighbouring Mid Sussex is only at 6.0, and Wealdon, also your close neighbours, is at 6.2. So you can see there that there is sort of like a sort of different picture between Lewis District and its neighbours, with twice the rate, but that is mainly down to this very sort of random fluctuation that you get overall when numbers are very, very low. Looking at where those cases are, the vast majority are along the coast, so Peacehaven, East West, and New Haven, East and West, and in Seaford. A handful in Lewistown, and then one in probably each of Newark and Chailey. But the interesting thing is the age, because and the gender, because you've got a pattern of most of the cases being in the under 30s. So you've got more males in that cohort as well, in ages 10 to 19 and 20 to 29. No cases currently in the under 9s. And then you've got a few cases going up to age 60. And then we have cases in females only in 60 to 69 and 70 to 79. The 70 to 79s could be care home related, and we do have an issue whereby some people in care homes continue to test positive well after any symptoms and well after vaccination has happened. And this is just a characteristic of older people. And because they're regularly and routinely tested using a high standard of testing, it's a result that we have to sort of watch, but ultimately is unlikely to mean that there's an outbreak or concern about that particular setting. Cases in Lewes have kind of plateaued since the 11th of May, and probably from this point on will start to come down. There's already a bit of a downturn in day-by-day rates, and that follows a pattern that we saw previously in Hastings, and then going back about 6 weeks in our neighbours in Eastbourne as well. So that's really the epidemiological picture. I hope you can all hear me, by the way, because you've all frozen on my screen.
We can certainly hear you, but you are frozen. But
that's fine. I'll continue then and not touch anything to alter that. And just hope that that I maintain the contact. The obvious concern that reported most of last week and over the weekend is in the growth of the Indian variant. We have not had more than 3 cases of variants of concern in the whole county for about the last 3 months. We're the lowest number of those in the southeast, and we've also kept across East Sussex the lowest rate of overall infections. That's not to say that things will change. The discussion has been at the SAGE committee that it looks like this Indian variant could be 1.5 times more transmissible than the Kent variant, and the Kent variant, certainly for us in East Sussex, as the next port of call, if you like, of spread, was that was incredibly rapid. We saw cases in parts of the county increase from very low figures, the type of low figures that we've got today, by a factor of 1,052% in a day, with that second wave of the Kent variant. The Indian variant is clearly, it's come from India, and it's come into the UK mainly from UK citizens returning from India and neighbouring countries, and most of those people now are have to go into quarantine hotels, and we're seeing a huge increase in the number of rooms in those hotels. In our locality, people coming into Gatwick are housed in a number of hotels in the Gatwick area. They're spread across Surrey and West Sussex. So we don't have any quarantine hotels in East Sussex as yet. We don't have a great population from South Asia in the county and in Lewes district. And where you see the increase in cases nationally, these are people who returned from India before quarantine, and there has been household and then potentially some community spread as well. They're not sort of wild cases as yet. Most can be traced back using the contact tracing centres to known cases of imported infection. However, the growth in numbers is causing serious concern in places like Bolton and Blackburn with Darwin. And we have had no specifics from government yet, but some murmurings that this may affect national lockdown easing measures, not today's measures, but those measures that are in line for the 21st of June. And this is because one of the 4 tests is about keeping variants of concern and variants under investigation under control. And if that's not the case, then one of those 4 tests won't be met. So I think whilst we're not yet directly affected by this variant, and directly affected by a worrying increase in cases, I think we have to be very, very cautious. And I think hearing a lot of discussion today in the press about hugging, hugging is something that probably for most people can be avoided. I think it's really crucial that the businesses that are now operating from either working outdoors only or working takeaway only, who are ramping up for residents in hotels and in bars and restaurants and cafes, looking at table service inside. We really want to see those businesses flourish, and we want to see them, as Tim mentioned, following the excellent guidance that was put out last year and was very, very successful in keeping our cases low throughout the summer and autumn last year. So things we can do without our going over the top, hugging everyone you meet, etc., etc., and recognizing that the rule of 6 still applies in these indoor settings as well. And again, being very cognizant that we don't push things. We know that over the past few weeks, people have attempted to push things. We know that people have been sort of saying, well, I know it's coming off in a couple of weeks, but we had so and so round for dinner, and then so and so came round. I think we just need to recognise that indoors is still a lot more dangerous than outdoors. And sadly, looking at the weather, certainly for this week, being outdoors is going to be a minority pursuit, I guess. But clearly, if things can be happening and people meeting outdoors rather than indoors, that's certainly for the benefit of everyone. So I'll finish my roundup there. What I shall probably do is very quickly click off and come back in, so I've got a little bit more usage on the screen and can see chat and things like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daryl. That's really helpful. Jessica, do you want to come in next, and in particular focus on vaccine rollout that obviously runs alongside the success with which we've all managed to keep the rates down locally?
Thank you, Zoe, and hello everybody. It's lovely to see everyone. Yeah, I will focus specifically on vaccines, Zoe, as I know that's the conversation that we'd had. But of course, if there are any other questions as we come to that, then really happy to pick those up. Unfortunately, I'm not able to stay for the totality of the meeting, Zoe, but I'll stay for as long as I possibly can.
Thank you.
OK, so a bit of an overview of the vaccine programme. I'll start with Sussex, and then I'll talk about East Sussex and Lewes districts specifically. So to date, across Sussex, we've now completed over 1.5 million vaccinations to date, and that equates to about 1 million of the first dose and about 500,000 of second dose vaccines. And over the weekend, in fact, we achieved the 1 million first dose rate, and I know that will be announced formally in Thursday's national data publication. And across Sussex again, in terms of cohorts 1 to 9, which is all of those cohorts down to age 50 and above, 90% of those have now received at least their first dose of vaccine. And in East Sussex, it's also 90% as well. In cohort 10, where we move down the categories, which is the age 40 to 49-year-olds, cohort 10, we've currently, for East Sussex, the rate is currently at 67% for the first vaccine. So it's an incredible achievement, really, I think, for the NHS nationally, and that's being reflected locally in terms of both take-up and ability to vaccinate. This week, there's a significant focus on that second dose of vaccines. People will probably have heard about the importance of that, particularly in line with the information that Darragh has been giving of possibility of impact of the Indian variant. But we do still have some availability this week for vaccinations of first doses, so people are encouraged to ensure that you're booking on when invited or checking on that national booking system to enable that to happen. We have begun also vaccinating in the further categories, which is the under 40s age group. And again, that's on a priority basis, or those that are vulnerable or may require that more critically or more urgently. So for Lewes in particular, there are over 90% of those first range of cohorts that have now had their first vaccination. So I think there's only about 1,000 people in all of those categories into the 50s and above that haven't yet had their first vaccination or have chosen not yet to have their first vaccination. Nearly 60% of them have also had the second vaccination as well, and that number will increase that this week with that significant focus on that second vaccination programme. 75% of people in the age 40 to 49 age bracket within Lewes have had their first vaccination, and in the cohort beneath that, which is age 30 to 39, have now become eligible. As we know, and about 15% of those have taken up the first vaccination. So it's rolling out well. We've been reviewing the advice that we've had from the Joint Committee on Vaccine IMS, the Government Committee, in terms of the second dose update, in terms of tackling that rising number of cases with this new variant. And what people will probably have heard from that is that the appointments for the second dose vaccine will be brought forward. So rather than the 12-week interval that we've previously been working to, that will be brought forward to an 8-week interval for those remaining people in those initial top 9 category groups, so the age 50 and above. So that's the strategy now, to ensure that we can make sure that those priority cohorts have had their second vaccination. For people under 50, they'll of course continue to get their first dose, and their second dose currently is still scheduled for that 12-week period. So it's the age 50s and over where we're concentrating the time in between the first vaccination and the second vaccination. So people don't need to do anything. So for all of those people in that initial range of cohorts that have had their first date vaccinations and they've got an appointment booked for their second dose in the next 10 days or so, then there's no action required, and appointments should just continue as planned. For people that had an appointment scheduled after the 25th of May, their second dose vaccination appointments should now be brought forward. So people will be hearing differently, either from their general practice team or through the national booking system, in order to make sure that we can bring those forward in line with those expectations and in line with that guidance. And of course, all of the sites that we've currently got available that are undertaking vaccinations, and all of the roving mechanisms and others that are in place, we're working really closely with to make sure that we can roll that out and make sure that we're following the most recent and updated guidance very, very swiftly. So Zoe, that's a really brief overview, and I will stop there. And obviously, if there are kind of particular things as part of discussion, happy to pick that up.
Thanks very much, Jessica. And just to get a sense, what time do you need to leave by? Sorry, you were muted. There you go.
Yes, I magically muted myself. Just before 5:15, Zoe. Okay,
well that's fine. We'll definitely get to questions before then. That's fantastic. So Jenny, are you on the line from 3VA?
I'm actually on Teams.
Ooh, great, lovely. Okay.
The side of the road was really quiet until just now. So I hope there's not too much traffic going past. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, well, in terms of the voluntary and community sector, I think it's been affected pretty well, like many businesses. Some organisations have carried on doing what they always do. Some have had to pivot and they moved to online. And some have not been open at all, virtually, over the last year. Groups in Lewes are beginning to look at how they can reopen. And I think the main issues, and this will come as no surprise, I think one of the main issues is around funding and resourcing the mutual aid groups. Most of the mutual aid groups have now stopped functioning. Because they were set up specifically to deliver food, and now that there are other ways of getting people their necessities, they have ceased functioning, but are ready to start again if needed. And 1 or 2 mutual aid groups are actually considering turning into regular community groups. For example, Lewes Coronavirus Volunteers are going to become a community organisation. One of the other issues that has come out, which has come out across the country, is around diverse communities and the lack of the issues faced by people from a lot of BAME communities. We've started talking with Peace Community Centre in Peacehaven and Diversity Lewes about how we can ensure that they are better connected into mainstream and other community services. And in fact, Peace Community Centre were very active in distributing COVID winter relief grants to many of their members of their community who were quite badly affected in terms of income, because they're self-employed, often as taxi drivers, and then with family at home, gas and electricity was being eaten up. So the COVID winter grants, which they have distributed and other groups have distributed, have been really well received. I think in total, the other groups who have distributed winter grants have been ones working with refugees, families, homeless people, so all sorts. The other issues that have also come up have been around mental health and volunteering again, and how do we, going forward, how do we coordinate volunteering opportunities within the Lewes district? We don't have a volunteer centre, so I think we're going to be looking at, we had a huge number of people, I don't know if you recall in the first lockdown, we had a huge number of people offering their help as volunteers, and we don't want to lose that kind of spirit of people helping other people in their communities. So we want to look at how within the Lewes district we can better support volunteering opportunities. I think the final thing that we're doing at the moment is we are beginning to look with groups around developing a recovery plan for themselves, so that, because I think at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of groups realised and organisations realised how precarious they were in terms of governance and continuity and planning. So we're looking with a number of groups in Lewes district now at putting together some kind of plan for their own recovery, so that in the future they will be a little bit more resilient. So that look at governance, funding, structure. Have they got the right structure? How are they going to earn income? Or do they need to fundraise? So that's something that's quite exciting going forward, because I think it'll help the sector to be a little bit more resilient going forwards. So I think I'll finish there now, unless anybody's got any questions.
Brilliant.
It's starting to rain.
Oh dear. Thanks very much, Jenny, who's travelling at the moment and has paused to join us. So I know we'll have a number of questions, but I also wonder whether we've got Justin Ingham here from Sussex Police, who's our new district inspector. I don't know if you want to say a few words, Justin, before we go into questions, and also whether or not Christina Eubank or Susan want to talk a bit about impact on the business community since we last spoke.
Hello there. I'm happy to say a few words. So my name's Justin Ingham. I'm the new district inspector for Lewes District. I've been in post now for
Oh dear.
I think from Sussex Police perspective, I think coming out of lockdown and looking at the nighttime economy, not just the old Friday and Saturday, it's actually the impact it's going to have as we go back to what normality is. And actually, what does that look like around licensing, events, temporary event notices, all of those types of things, to make sure that we know what's going on so we can police that to the best of our abilities and keep people safe. And then looking at also some of the other issues around the vulnerability of people in those situations as well. So yeah, for us, it's very much at the moment, the focus is really driving towards trying to get back to that return to normality and the nighttime economy. Yeah, so there's quite a few challenges there.
Okay, thank you very much. Christina, I know you wanted to ask a question, but do you also want to contribute at this point?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, Susan is probably more specific to Lewes, although we do, as EDIL, we do work with Lewes district people, and we have got some programmes on the go at the moment, which we're very happy to help. If you know anybody who wants help, they've been made redundant, they need help finding a job, CV writing, interviewing skills, or they want to start their own business, we can definitely help with that. And we've got a reasonable cohort of people going through a startup programme, which is really effective. so point them our way. And do you want me to ask the question I wanted to ask?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Why not?
It was just to ask Tim. I got a bit confused about the figures because you said that there were 59 antisocial behaviour cases that are live, and then there were also 59 people who had become homeless. Was that in temporary accommodation, or then you said there were 5 rough sleepers and that you'd managed to put 10 of them into accommodation? I just wanted to make sure I understood those because I have to feed back to all the chambers of commerce across Lewes district.
Okay, thanks, Christina. With regards, there's 59 ASB cases, so antisocial behaviour cases. Separate to that, we had 59 people present as homeless or risk of homeless in the last month, of which we placed 5 into emergency accommodation. So the other 54 we found alternative solutions to, thinking that emergency accommodation is not a solution. And we have we've got accommodated 10 former rough sleepers. And there are 5 rough sleepers sleeping rough that we're outreaching, trying to get them accommodated.
Okay, I think I got confused because the figures were the same in different bits, but I've got it now. Thank you very much.
I'll drop them on an email to you as well, Christina. That'd
be really handy. Thank you.
Great. And Christina, we record this, so you're very welcome to share the recording with your chambers of commerce all over the district and beyond, if that's helpful.
That would be really great. Thank you. Nikki will send it out to us, presumably.
Yes. Yeah.
Lovely.
Okay. So, do we have any questions, comments, contributions at this stage for any of our speakers, or any contributions that anybody wants to make at this stage? Belinda, do you want to introduce yourself, Belinda?
Yes. Hi, it's Belinda from Lewes Open Door. It's just the one I always bang on about, but just to say, Tim, I know you've only got 5 rough sleepers verified in Lewes, but actually there are significantly more than that. And it's an ongoing problem because actually a lot of them don't want to engage, don't want to be verified, because they don't want to be placed out of Lewes town into Eastbourne or Newhaven or the places they're being offered. But most people that we're dealing with, the Rough Sleepers Initiative and that, know of that. But I just thought I would say it, so it's not on record definitely that there's only 5 rough sleepers.
So, without wanting to put Tim on the spot, but I'm about to, the last time we spoke about this, we talked about you two having a meetup. Has that occurred in the interim? No. No. Okay, fine.
No, and I've asked Katie Dawkins to meet up with you, Belinda, to discuss that and discuss what accommodation, because we've got some next steps accommodation funding. So Katie will be in touch to speak to you about that.
Thank you.
Great. Michelle and then Graham. Michelle, do you want to introduce yourself? Okay, let's go to Graham.
Yes, thank you, Zoe. Good afternoon. Sorry for being a bit late.
Graham.
Just quickly, we are...
Introduce yourself, Graham. Sorry, because there's some new people here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm Graham Peters. I'm the chairman of Team East Sussex, which is the growth board for East Sussex, trying to drive forward jobs and growth in a sustainable and green manner. And one of the things we're trying to do, we originated at Team East Sussex, is a project in conjunction with the psychology department of the University of Sussex, which is looking at the effects of home working and trying to come up with some strategies and hopefully a toolkit to help those working from home. We've got a survey out on the streets at the moment, and I'd be very grateful, Zoe, if you'd let me send this to Nikki to be sent out to all colleagues afterwards. Please encourage as many people to whom it's appropriate, which is people who've been working from home. We're particularly looking for more employers to fill this survey in. There is even a prize, or a couple of prizes actually. You can get some Sussex goodies, which will either be food or wine or something along those lines. But very helpful, the more we can get. Christina has been fabulous. And we're slightly worried actually that the programme has been skewed towards Eastbourne because Christina's worked so hard at it. So come on, you Lewisians. Get on with it, please, and fill it in. But really very grateful. If I may, Zoe, just for 20 seconds more, you've seen the announcement, I hope many of you today, about the Queen's Green Canopy Initiative. to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee next year. It's about tree planting nationally. It's a great way to encourage people to plant trees. Most of you will be hearing from me or from some of my colleagues in the Lieutenancy about how that might work. So start thinking of wonderful places where you can plant trees, please. Thanks, Zoe. I've done my advertising.
So people are asking in the chat if you could put the link to the previous item that you were talking about in the chat. That would be
okay. We'll do. Yeah.
That would be great. And of course, we will circulate it to those people that aren't here.
If my technology is up to it, I will do that.
Okay, fine. So who else was wanting to speak? My hand function is not working so well at the moment. A lot of you are stopped for me. I don't know quite why. Is it Michael White?
It's Ron White, unless there's a Michael White as well.
Sorry. So does it say? So do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, sure. I'm Ron White. I'm a town councillor in Peacehaven. I was a GP in Peacehaven for 20 years until about 3 years ago. Just taking up the homelessness thing. I'm obviously not totally up to date with the rough end of general practice, but certainly very regularly I had people often with very complex needs sleeping in cars, and lots more people sofa surfing with no fixed abode, which is practically impossible to do decent healthcare. So, you know, we've seen then, you know, if you're in that sort of position or otherwise vulnerable, then actually even the pandemic doesn't really fizz on you because you're actually trying to survive till tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And just a plea that we build back better. I mean, one of the things that Peacehaven and Telscombe Cliffs, with a population between them of nearly 25,000, doesn't have any jobs. So everyone leaves in the morning and there's huge congestion. We need more jobs, so that's why I was quite interested in that previous one, and I'd just be interested to maybe work with Lewis on that. And also for public health, we feel a bit forgotten down in Peacehaven. The playing field strategy from Lewis District showed that we'd by far the lowest playing fields in the county and very few teams. So I'm just doing a bit of a plug for Peacehaven.
Lovely.
And also actually Newhaven, because a lot of the issues are similar.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Right, thank you. So before we move on, is there anything from our town clerks here that want to raise at all from your perspective at a district-wide level? Tony, yeah.
Very quickly, thinking about our doctor's surgery, which was under pressure before COVID to deliver to this increasing population in Peacehaven. It's become really, really frustrating and difficult for members of the public to even get an appointment. You spend a long time on the phone, you know, and you've got the added difficulties like Councillor White just said about people at home, you know, but even people, you know, managing their children or living with a parent, and it's become impossible to have any normal or acceptable interaction with the doctor's surgery in Peacehaven. So you know, we're looking at various things as we hopefully pull out of COVID, and I think Tim mentioned about supporting staff and working from home, but there's a lot more serious things like this that we need to be. They were bad before COVID. They've got a lot worse, and as we come out of COVID, there's no signs that they'll ever improve to give people a reasonable service. Mm-hmm. And of course, COVID has generated an increased demand. So I just wanted to wave a flag. Sorry, for the doctor's surgery in Peacehaven. You know, which is really poor service, and it's a major concern for the health of the people of Peacehaven.
Okay. So, and presumably you've raised these concerns with Jessica. Jessica, is there anything that you want to address at this point on that?
So thank you. We are working with the practice and we're working with Healthwatch. We have had feedback about the practice as people will know following their practice merger. And I think it's fair to say they have had some challenges with their systems and others, which is perhaps what we're hearing here and describing here. So I think it's a point well made. We are working really, really closely with a range of partners across to particularly focus not just on that practice, but of course on all of our practices. So I'd be very happy to pick that up offline if that would be helpful with any people that are here as part of this course, so that I can share the action that the practice themselves are undertaking and we as a CCG are of course supporting with, and then that wider support that Healthwatch is giving in terms of that regularity of feedback and so on from the patients within that particular area.
Great, thank you very much. I'm just a little bit mindful of time because we've got our guest here, but just to pick up John Lamb's question about digital contact and the digitally excluded. Graham, I wonder if you want to talk about the work that Team East Sussex and CELEP is doing, because it's a major priority, a part of the recovery plan, isn't it, on digital exclusion and rollout of, and I know a bit of a passion of yours, rollout of superfast broadband into our rural communities in particular, but to those that are excluded.
I think I'll pass, if I may, today, Zoe, but if you like, I'll see if I can get something written up and sent round to colleagues.
Apologies to put you on the spot there.
Nothing like putting me on the spot, so we'll just start.
Okay.
Point taken, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so it is actually a key part of the recovery plan for all of East Sussex, actually, and we'll make sure that we get, perhaps it could be a part of a topic of discussion for next time, because it is one of our 4 priorities that we picked up only just under a year ago that we need to address. And unless, John, you've got something that you'd like to contribute at this stage, and then we'll move on to Kezia.
Just to say that I'm involved in a project called Connecting Lewes, which is intended to reach out to people who are not online and help them to do so with the help of volunteers, including the Lewes community volunteers and other organisations. But that's just for Lewes Town. But we hope that if it's successful, it could be a model for elsewhere in the county.
Lovely, thank you very much. That's really useful information. Right, without further ado, shall we move on? Kezia, we've invited Kezia from the Living Wage Foundation to talk about the work of the Living Wage Foundation broadly, because as an administration, but also as a community, one of the things that we identified was how to address inequality across our district, and particularly inequality when it comes to providing fair and fair work and fair working practices. So, Kezia, are you there?
Yeah, here.
Great.
To kick off. Yeah,
lovely. Okay.
Well,
over to you. We've got about 35 minutes. Oh.
Great. Okay. Well, yeah, thanks so much for having me here today, and lovely to kind of hear from all of you as well. I'm just going to attempt to share my screen, so bear with me 1 second while I get that up. Great. Could everyone see that, just to double check that that's working?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay. Well, yeah, thanks very much for having me today. I'm Kezia, I'm Programme Officer at the Living Wage Foundation. I work on our Living Wage Employer Accreditation Scheme. I kind of lead on our accreditations in the northeast of England. I also support in the southeast of England. And I'm also currently working on our Living Wage for Key Workers campaign, which we've been running in response to the pandemic, so sort of for the past year now, mainly sort of trying to grow the living wage in social care and in the NHS and also in sort of essential retail as well. So I'm here, I'll sort of give a bit of a background about the Living Wage Foundation and the work that we do. I can talk briefly about our Living Wage Employer Accreditation, and then happy to answer any questions or connect with you sort of after the meeting to have some more kind of targeted discussions, I guess. So first of all, just to give you a bit of an idea of what we do at the foundation specifically. So we recognise and we celebrate the leadership shown by living wage employers across the UK. The living wage campaign as a whole and the living wage movement is sort of, we're currently celebrating our 20th anniversary. So 20 years ago, the campaign was started in East London by a group of cleaners who were campaigning to be awarded a wage that sort of reflected the cost of living, and the campaign grew from there. At the foundation, we're celebrating 10 years. So we were set up in 2011. And since then have been able to sort of recognise over 7,000, nearly 8,000 actually, employers across the UK who have signed up to our accreditation scheme. So sort of three broad themes around the work that we do. The first one being our accreditation scheme. It's the most popular scheme that we run at the moment. So we sort of provide a recognition through the Living Wage Employer Mark, which is our logo that you might have seen across any living wage employers. We also run a few other programmes targeted at specifically low paying sectors, such as our Living Wage Funder scheme, which targets low pay in the third sector, as well as our recognised service provider scheme, which I guess targets low pay most commonly in sort of cleaning, catering, security sectors and industries who work on sort of client contract basis. So yeah, a variety of other schemes that we run, but our accreditation for living wage employers is definitely the most popular. We also advise and support on how to implement the living wage. So that second point being around intelligence. When someone decides to implement the living wage and wants to become more involved, you're assigned sort of a member of staff from the team who'll be able to guide you through your accreditation, for example, or be able to support and be on hand to answer any questions that you have. And then finally, around influence, we're a public forum to support the living wage. So this is, I guess, most popularly during Living Wage Week. Each November, we announce the new living wage rates, and that's often when we get the most media coverage around the living wage, and we receive kind of cross-party support for the living wage each year as well. So those are some sort of broad categories around the type of work that we do. I will also kind of just briefly explain what we mean by the living wage. Realise that at times it can be a bit confusing to have sort of a variety of different wage rates and what we mean by each of them. So just to say, at the Living Wage Foundation, when we refer to the living wage, we're referring to the real living wage, which is the only wage rate based on what it costs to live. This is in comparison to sort of the government set minimum wage or the national living wage. So the minimum wage being for under 25 set currently at £8.36, and the national living wage being for over 25s currently at £8.91. But obviously, when we refer to the living wage, we're referring to the real living wage. It's a wage rate for any staff member aged 18 or over, and currently set at £9.50 across the UK and a higher rate of £10.85 in London. In terms of the calculation of the rates, this is a process that's sort of done independently. It's reviewed annually by the Resolution Foundation and overseen by the Independent Living Wage Commission. So three sort of broad steps to this calculation. Firstly, focus groups. We have a number of focus groups who agree a core basket of goods and services to provide a minimum acceptable standard of living for different household types. So that sort of takes into account a variety of factors, including sizes of families, for example. So then these goods and services that the focus groups agree on are priced, and the costs are priced separately between London and the rest of the UK, given the higher cost of living in London specifically. And then finally, an hourly wage is calculated to meet these costs. It's weighted according to the incidence of different household types and takes into account tax and benefits as well. So I'll talk a little bit about, I I guess, yeah, the problem and what we're trying to tackle as a foundation, and then what we see as some solutions to this. So each year at the foundation, we release a report that sort of details the number of employees who receive less than the living wage across the UK, and this is divided by region and various other demographic data that I'm very happy to share after this, if you're interested in reading this in more detail. But just some sort of headline figures from our most recent report specifically about the South East. So there are currently, or I guess a few months ago, were 682,000 employees in the South East of England earning below the real living wage. And interestingly, this figure sort of increased by 79,000 between 2019 and 2020. So it's clearly a important regional problem, and something that we're definitely trying to sort of grow the living wage in the region in particular. So that figure is sort of equates to 16.6% of all jobs in the South East which are paid below the real living wage. So the percentage itself is a little lower than the national average, but the number of 682,000 is still quite significantly higher than in other regions. So yes, that's still an issue that we sort of are really passionate about within the region. And just that final point around the percentage goes up to 20% when considering just women. So there's clearly some sort of gendered issue behind the issue of low pay and in-work poverty, particularly given sort of the types of work that are often in lower paid sectors, for example, care work or cleaning. So yeah, just some sort of figures to paint the picture of low pay and in-work poverty that we are trying to tackle with our different schemes. So yeah, one solution we see to these problems is living wage employer accreditation. So it's a scheme that I think I mentioned we've got sort of well over 7,000 employers signed up to now, including kind of household names like IKEA and various banks, and you're able to sort of look at our website and look through all of the living wage employers that we have signed up. So 3 broad steps to this accreditation scheme. Firstly, to pay the living wage to all your directly employed staff. This particularly for sort of SMEs and relatively smaller organisations is often quite a straightforward step. Also relatively straightforward if you're sort of working in a sector or working in an industry that by nature of what you do is sort of higher paid. The second step is to have a plan in place to pay any contractors that you employ a real living wage. So this applies to any members of staff who are providing a regular service for you. This requirement is sort of as part of the living wage employer accreditation, because it's often sort of the services that are outsourced that are among sort of the lowest paid sectors. So this part of the accreditation is to ensure sort of any cleaners, for example, any security staff, any catering staff, any staff that are more typically more likely to be low paid are included within your accreditation. And often when we get sort of larger organisations signing up, that's where the impact really lies when they become accredited, and you know we receive sort of information about how many people received a pay rise as a result of that. That's often once they implement that within their sort of regular third-party staff. So yeah, those 2 sort of main requirements to become a living wage employer, and then once that's done, you can complete the online application form. The process is should be quite straightforward, and we I think I mentioned earlier, like when you sort of sign up to become a living wage employer, you're allocated a certain member of staff who will be able to guide you through the process, answer any questions, and advise on sort of the best course of action for your organisation specifically. We also obviously have a large network of employers who are able to sort of put you in touch with and share experiences and share expertise that way as well. So I'll talk just briefly about you know, why this all matters and what actually it means when you do become accredited and when organisations in general become accredited. So I guess the main thing to emphasise is that it's a long-term commitment to the rates. It's a long-term commitment to tackling in-work poverty, in that it's not just a one-off uplift to the current wage rates. The Living Wage Employer Accreditation is sort of an annually reviewed licence agreement, which means that accredited employers commit each year to uplift the relevant members of staff, sort of ensuring that workers will always earn the living wage and be able to sort of meet their everyday needs as a result of the wage that they earn. I guess, yeah, so the mark itself, the Living Wage Employer mark, our logo that we provide all of our employers that sign up, gives consumers, users, clients sort of a clear sign of your status as a responsible employer, and it's something that we sort of continually receive feedback on, being able to show the Living Wage Employer mark. And more generally, the accreditation itself builds our movement. You know, it helps our campaign and demonstrates leadership within your industry, within your network, within your sector, and encourages other employers to sort of get on board and sign up. Just briefly to talk about the benefits to a business itself, or to an organisation that does sign up. So don't just take my word for it. We sort of survey all of our living wage employers, and these statistics were published in a report by Cardiff Business School to sort of research the benefit to businesses to implementing the living wage and becoming a living wage employer with the foundation. So as you can see, we've got sort of really positive figures that come out from these surveys. 64% of businesses saying the living wage sort of helped them differentiate themselves from others in their industry. 75% of businesses saying the living wage has increased motivation and retention rates for employees. This is something that we continually hear, and really positive feedback that we get in terms of staff retention and recruitment as well. 86% of organisations say the living wage improves the reputation of their business, and 93% overall say the living wage has sort of benefited their business in general. So really positive figures that we receive from the employers within our network. And then finally, I've just got a quick video to show that sort of I guess showcases the worker experience of the living wage as a sort of a campaign that started 20 years ago as a result of, I guess, grassroots activism from employees themselves. We really centre worker experience at the heart of what we do. So I'll just show a quick video to sort of, as I say, showcase the impact that the living wage has on workers themselves. Hopefully the sound will work.
It means that I looked after and cared for in my family. Always made a big difference, basically, because nowadays we could.
Lost sound, Kezia.
Oh, not sure why that would be.
Try again.
Can you hear it at all now?
No, how weird. It was working.
I'm not sure if that's settings on here or if it's Teams.
That's annoying. All right, well, let's put the link in the chat so that we can watch it. Thank you so much, Kezia, for talking us through that, and really interesting presentation. And I know a number of organisations are already signed up, including as District Council. We're definitely on our journey towards accreditation. As I just checked in our report, and we are, it says so. Does anybody want to ask any questions or make any comments about this? I can see Emily, do you want to come in? And
I can do. It's a bit noisy here. There's some strumming in the background. I suppose someone who's worked around food poverty for a number of years, I'm always really slightly bothered by the fact that so many people experiencing food poverty are in the food industry, whether that's at the farming stage, the food factories, people driving the trucks that move the food around, and then particularly in hospitality and catering. And obviously hospitality in particular has been hugely affected and is really under pressure. And I was just interested to know, not just in hospitality, I suppose, but just in general, whether if we have any information about whether what's happened with the pandemic and all the pressures that businesses are under is affecting wage levels, whether we have any trends up or down. It might be we just don't know yet.
Lovely, thank you.
So I mean, I can talk in terms of the employers that we've had sign up and continually sort of become living wage employers since the pandemic started. So those numbers have actually increased even more so during the pandemic than they were sort of prior to that, particularly I think potentially as a result of people talking about low pay more and that being more sort of at the forefront of the media and people really valuing their workers in a sense. So in terms of particularly in key worker sectors, you know, we've had sort of a record-breaking number of employers in social care who have signed up since the pandemic to commit to pay their carers a real living wage, and in a variety of other sectors as well. I think in terms of hospitality, I guess less so, obviously, because hospitality venues have been shut for the majority of the pandemic, and I think, yeah, potentially a little bit early to tell in terms of that. We do have a sort of number of hospitality venues already signed up to our living wage employer accreditation, and this is something that we really try and showcase through our sort of social media channels as well. We highlight a new living wage employer each day, and so sort of if consumers want to buy living wage, they know sort of where to go in their region and that sort of thing. But yeah, I guess in the next few months and in the next few years, we'll sort of still definitely be seeing the results and the impact of the pandemic on those sort of sectors as well.
Thank you, Kezia. Belinda, and then Graham.
Hi, I was just wondering, are you considering talking to the companies that are applying for accreditation about not only considering the living wage of their contractors, but also their suppliers, because it's something that particularly affects the retail industry, doesn't it? So if they're buying from I know a lot of goods are imported, but within this country, it's been highlighted that people are not being paid. Or is that too big a topic? I know it's a big topic.
Yeah, definitely. So I think so the license agreement itself sort of requires that any third-party supplier who provides essentially a service on behalf of an organisation regularly has to be sort of within the scope of the license agreement. We would always encourage our employers to go further than the requirements of the license agreement, and you know, many do sort of require that everyone they do business with, for example, or at least sort of bringing up the living wage with everyone in their network. And we like, I guess a lot of our work is sort of celebrating the leadership shown by a variety of our employers who do go further than just those requirements of the accreditation. I won't sort of go into too much detail about it now, but we've got a sort of number of other schemes that some employers have begun to sort of sign up to go further than the accreditation, namely our recently launched Living Hours scheme, which is around tackling not only low pay but insecure work as well. So sort of certain exploitative 0 hours contract practices, for example. Our Living Hours scheme sort of guarantees a minimum number of hours per week, guarantees notice periods for shifts that are cancelled, that sort of thing, to sort of tackle those, because we recognise, you know, low pay is not just about the wage itself, it's about the various other conditions which contribute to sort of in-work poverty as well.
Brilliant, very interesting, particularly
I hope it doesn't sound like a vacuous comment, but I think the thing that's fascinating talk, by the way, and thank you very much, Kezia. The thing that surprised me is if you discount London, which is always a good thing to do, and for the moment, the purposes of this comment, don't think too much about the under 25s, that actually the difference between the minimum wage or the normal minimum wage and the minimum living wage is only about 7%. Now, that's not a huge rise to try and advocate to employers that they should be thinking about very seriously. And I think that feels quite a powerful argument to me. You know, if you're talking about 20 or 30% to employers at the moment, an awful lot of them are going around and say, hey, we're struggling to survive. But 7% somehow doesn't feel an impossible mountain to climb. So it's a wonderful point at which to push. And I've certainly taken that all on board with considerable interest. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Graham. That's well pointed out. It's not a big mountain to climb at all, and yet it's surprisingly rife how few employers do sign up. So particularly in those industries that Kezia has spoken about. So any other comments or questions? One of the things that we've been wanting to explore with the Living Wage Foundation is Lewes becoming a living wage place. That's partly the reason why we're wanting to, a living wage, and I like the idea of living wage and a living hours place, of really stimulating the Lewes district partners as being, thinking about doing that. And for lots of public sector organisations, the challenge is less in its own pay, but actually in its contractors. And through its procurement routes. So, and that's quite a big conversation to orchestrate across East Sussex, really, and arguably across the whole region. So that's some of the things that's part of the reason why we brought it here, to stimulate thought and support for that kind of approach to protect those who are most vulnerable to economic problems. Overall. So is there any other final comments or thoughts? Graham, you've got a hand up. Is that a legacy hand? Yes. Okay. Any thoughts? Normally we hold these things on a Friday afternoon. You can't even blame a Friday afternoon for being. It's Monday, everybody. Right, Tony.
Yeah, just to say, as a council for our staff, we're obviously governed by what's loosely known as the Green Book, but basically the civil service public servants. So, but I think it's definitely something we can bear in mind for contractors, subcontractors and occasional contractors. So thank you very much for a very interesting presentation.
Great. Any others? Ron.
I know my kids in the past have worked in hospitality and care work. And certainly in hospitality, there's an awful lot, 16, 17, 18-year-olds up to probably even 25 are well below this pay rate. I know it's a big issue. I mean, they're in a fortunate position, but trying to survive in that is just about impossible. I mean, because in tea shops and various places like that in Brighton, that's quite common, and I suspect it's probably similar elsewhere.
Yeah, great. And John's just put in the chat that Lewes Town Council is already. And are you an accredited living wage employer? As in, have you got the hallmark? Have you got the badge?
I'm not sure about that. We're described as I think as a friendly living wage employer. I'm not sure what that means. I just looked it up on the map, Kezia.
A friendly.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see that Lewes Town Council is accredited. So Yeah.
Well, a number of us will be following suit. Great. All right. So unless there's anything else,
could I just to say finally, like, yeah, thanks very much for all of your comments and questions. Like, more than happy to share my contact details and answer any questions or take any more conversations sort of via email or have a separate meeting if you're interested in finding out more about the foundation or about any of the projects that we do. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Great, thank you so very much, Kezia, for joining us. Thank you everybody else for joining. I just wanted to have a brief conversation about where we go next with, we've been calling this the Recovery Summit, and we've been holding them roughly every 2 to 3 months. As we enter, recovery will go on for a long time, right? And even though, we're allowed to cautiously hug, and Daryl won't like us hugging, so let's not cautiously hug. But we're probably on the long, slow return to and probably trying to ward off the worst excesses of some of the recession that we are likely to experience. I guess the question that I'm holding is, do people want to continue to meet in this forum in this way? And is it still a useful place to be coming together, even remotely? Although it would be quite nice to see each other face to face, but remotely is easy. Once a quarter to touch base as leaders across the Lewes district. Is that something people would value and want to do? And if so, good, thank you, Tony. And if so, do you have any thoughts on format, ways in which you'd like that conversation to continue? So I can see Tony's nodding. It's hard to see other people nod, by the way, because Teams is limiting in terms of. Oh, good. I can see some more nods. Maybe some thumbs up or chat in the chat box. Right. So Tony, yeah, and it looks like Jackie saying thumbs up too. Yeah, Tony, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, just quickly. This has been extremely useful, not obviously through COVID, but one of the things that's clearly recognised, but not fully exploited, is the interaction between town, district, county, and so on. The number of volunteer groups that existed before, the number that have arisen, and we've already heard about some that will remain after lockdown. There's so much information available, and there's so much repetition as well. So any good practice or anything we can all pick up, I found these meetings extremely useful, and thank you very much.
Okay, good. All right, that's good to hear. And I can see a few people putting a few things in the chat about format, and yeah, so a kind of bit of sit rep. How are we all doing? Plus a bit of content on some interesting ideas. The spirit of this, Ron, has always been that it's been about building back better, although that's not a language that we've used, but that is the point of this, is to be able to address inequality and to be able to ensure that we promote economic well-being for our community. That is the point of this. And bringing together all those different players is a place where we come together to at least hear where each other is at. And of course, for the most people in the public sector, there is lots of other places where those conversations go on, both in terms of topic, but also in partnership terms. So, yeah, okay, all right. Well, let's continue. If people have particular thoughts about what they would like to address next time, at the moment, the agenda is broadly set by what feels like the right thing to be doing. But I would be really up for a conversation amongst people about what actually you would like to cover off next time. And I'd be really open to some dialogue about that. So do get in touch. And thank you so much, everybody, for all your time and effort. When you come spend an hour and a half on a Monday afternoon, thank you. so much on behalf of all the residents of Lewes District. It's lovely to see you all. Take care. See you next time.
Zoe, bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Kezia. Oh.